The flower shop smelled of roses and jasmine that morning, but Lila couldn't enjoy any of it. Her hands shook slightly as she wrapped a white lily bouquet in soft paper. This was the day she would finally try to secure the contract with the Grand Meridian Hotel, the most prestigious place in the city. If they accepted her flowers, her small shop wouldn't just survive, it would flourish. She locked the door behind her and walked through the busy streets, her heart thudding like footsteps in an empty hallway. Inside the hotel's marble lobby, everything felt enormous. The ceilings, the columns, the polished floors reflecting chandeliers like stars caught under glass. She felt small, almost invisible, carrying her modest bouquet through the glittering silence. The receptionist barely glanced at her before calling upstairs, and soon Lila was led to the director's office on the highest floor. Every step up the carpeted hallway felt heavier than the last. Mr. Kadim didn't look up when she entered. He sat behind an impossibly large desk, flipping through documents with quick, impatient movements. He was known as strict, distant, difficult, the kind of man who never wasted time on anything that didn't benefit him directly. Lila cleared her throat and tried to introduce herself, her voice gentle but steady. She spoke about her shop, her arrangements, her clients, her passion for using flowers to tell stories, but he didn't hear any of it. He waved a dismissive hand, his eyes fixed on a report. "We don't work with small vendors," he said, the words cutting cleanly, like scissors through silk. "We have our suppliers. You may go." Lila felt something inside her crumble, not loudly but quietly, like a petal falling from a stem. She thought of her mother teaching her how to arrange flowers for weddings, funerals, births, how flowers could speak when people couldn't. She thought of the overdue bills waiting in her drawer at home. She thought of the nights she stayed up trimming stems while her friends slept. She forced herself to nod. She didn't want to beg. Not here, not to him. She turned to leave. Her breath was tight in her chest, her fingers trembling around the bouquet. She was steps from the door when the phone on his desk rang sharply, splitting the silence like lightning. He answered in a clipped tone. And then everything about him changed. The voice on the other end spoke fast, urgently, in Arabic. Kadim's posture straightened, his jaw tensed, his brows drew in tight. He responded in the same language, but there was stress in his voice. Frustration, pressure, maybe even fear. Lila paused mid-step, her hand hovering near the doorknob. Words reached her clearly. Delegation arriving. Cultural expectations. No translator. No cultural consultant. Potential offense. Possible scandal. She understood everything. Kadim hung up, exhaling sharply, one hand pressed to his forehead. He still hadn't noticed her standing there. His world was suddenly fragile, teetering, and he had no idea how to hold it together. Lila slowly turned back, not because she wanted revenge, not because she wanted to prove him wrong, but because in that moment she recognized the look in his eyes, a man who had run out of answers. Lila hesitated, her pulse drumming in her ears. The bouquet in her hands felt heavier now, its petals trembling just like her fingers. She took a breath, steady, grounded, and spoke softly in the same flowing Arabic she'd heard through the phone. Her tone was respectful, warm, confident. If the delegation is from the Al-Mansouri family, they will expect a welcome of sincerity, not extravagance, she said. The words stopped the room. Kadim froze mid-movement, slowly lifting his gaze. For the first time, he truly looked at her. No dismissiveness, no impatience, just stunned awareness. Lila stood there, small and calm in her simple shoes and faded cardigan, yet somehow commanding the room with nothing but her voice. "You speak Arabic?" he asked, but the question came out more like disbelief than curiosity. "My mother taught me," she replied. "We lived in Casablanca for many years. I know the customs, the symbolism, the way the flowers should be placed to honor guests without overwhelming them." Kadim leaned back in his chair, his tough composure cracking just enough for vulnerability to seep through. He explained, not in detail but enough, that the hotel was under immense pressure. The delegation was powerful, respected, and influential. A misstep could damage not only the hotel's reputation but his own career. There was no time to hire consultants, no time to prepare, no room for failure. Leela listened, absorbing each detail, her expression thoughtful rather than triumphant. She didn't remind him of how he had dismissed her. She didn't need to. The shift between them hung in the air like something delicate and unfinished. She stepped closer to his desk, placing the bouquet of lilies gently before him. "These are white lilies," she said in Arabic, her voice slow and clear. "In their culture, they represent peace, purity, and welcome. But they must be paired with orange blossoms to signify joy and blessing. Otherwise, the message becomes cold instead of warm." Kadim's eyes widened, not simply at her knowledge, but at the depth of it. He realized that she didn't just sell flowers. She understood them. She explained the arrangement ideas, how soft lighting would highlight the blooms, how fragrance should enhance but never overwhelm, how the path of flowers from entrance to meeting room should feel like an invitation, not a display. Her voice was steady, purposeful, filled with life experience woven through every word. As she spoke, the panic drained from his face. The severity in his posture eased. He was still the director, still powerful, but now he was someone who needed her, respected her, relied on her expertise. When she finally finished, the room fell silent, the kind of silence that changes something. Kadim looked at her for a long moment, the edges of his expression softer now, more human. "Lila," he said quietly, "will you help us prepare?" There was no command in his voice, no condescension, just a genuine plea and a promise hanging unspoken behind it. "I will not underestimate you again." Layla nodded, not triumphantly, not pridefully, but with quiet dignity. "Yes," she said, "I will." By evening, the hotel lobby had transformed into something that felt alive. Soft lanterns glowed like tiny suns, their light reflecting gently off the polished floors. Trails of orange blossoms and white lilies lined the entrance, not crowded, not loud, but arranged with intention, like poetry written in petals. The air carried a subtle fragrance that welcomed rather than overwhelmed. Hotel staff moved carefully, whispering instructions Lila had given them, replicating placement she demonstrated with patient hands. She had worked tirelessly, her sleeves rolled up, strands of hair escaping her bun, her fingers stained with pollen, but her expression was calm, focused, purposeful. When the delegation arrived, everything seemed to slow. The guests looked around and their faces softened instantly. Not polite smiles, genuine appreciation. Their leader touched one of the lilies lightly, nodding with respect. He spoke to Kadim in Arabic, and Kadim answered with the few phrases he knew, but his tone carried confidence. Lila watched from a respectful distance, her heart swelling quietly in her chest. The deals were signed later that night, smoothly, warmly, laughter and conversation flowing like warm tea. Her work had not just impressed them, it had honored them. After hours of meetings, when guests had finally retired to their rooms and the lobby lights dimmed, Lila stepped outside to catch her breath. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of orange blossoms from the entrance she had decorated. She closed her eyes, feeling the exhaustion settle in her muscles, but it was the kind that felt good, like something earned. She didn't hear Kadim approach at first. He stopped a step away, his voice quieter than she had ever imagined it could be. "I owe you more than a thank you," he said. Gone was the stern director who dismissed her. Standing before her was a man who had been humbled, not by loss, but by realization. Leela turned and met his gaze. There was no tension now, no fear, just two people standing in the gentle quiet of a job well done. "You saved our reputation," he continued. "You saved my position, and more importantly, you saved me from my own arrogance." His honesty was almost disarming. He offered her the contract to supply the hotel's floral arrangements, not as charity, not as apology, but as recognition. Real, earned recognition. He held the papers out to her. A formal agreement, long-term, reliable, life-changing. Lila didn't need to think. She accepted, but not with trembling desperation like before. She accepted with the steady confidence of someone who finally knew her worth was undeniable. "Flowers speak," she said softly, repeating the words her mother used to say. "You just have to listen." Kadim nodded, understanding now in a way he hadn't understood before. Lila walked away with the night reflecting in her eyes, the scent of lilies still clinging to her hands, not as someone who begged for a chance, but as someone who claimed the space she deserved. Her small shop would no longer struggle. Her name would be known. Her mother's teachings had bloomed into something powerful, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt not overlooked, but seen.